Evelyn Miller at my son's wedding. He told me, "You don't belong here in front of everyone." I sacrificed everything for him, and this was my reward. But then his bride grabbed the mic and revealed a truth that changed everything.
Before I tell you what happened, like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell. Now let's begin. I'm sitting on my porch right now, watching the Texas sky turn that particular shade of burnt orange. It gets just before dusk. The air smells like dust and mesquite, same as it did when I was a girl running barefoot down these very roads. Funny how some things never change, even when everything else does. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story, my story, it doesn't start here, on this quiet evening with a glass of sweet tea sweating in my hand. It starts 25 years ago, though the roots go back even further than that. I was young once. Hard to believe, I know, looking at these weathered hands and the silver streaking through my hair. But I was, young and hopeful, and foolish enough to believe that love could conquer anything. I met James Miller at a county fair when I was 19. He had dark eyes and an easy smile, and when he asked me to dance, I thought I'd found my forever. We married that fall. Michael came along 2 years later, arriving on a humid August morning that seemed to stretch time itself. I remember holding him for the first time, counting his tiny fingers, breathing in that sweet baby smell. In that moment, I made him a silent promise. I'll give you everything. I'll make sure you have a better life than mine. I didn't know then how much that promise would cost me. For 4 years, we were a family, not a perfect one. James worked construction when he could find it. I waitressed at the diner on Main Street, but we were together. Michael was bright as a button, always asking questions, always laughing. He had his father's dark eyes, but my stubborn chin. Then came the day everything shattered. I can still see it. That old Chevy pickup, rusty around the edges, packed with James's things. Michael was playing in the yard, pushing his toy truck through the dirt, making engine noises with his mouth. He didn't understand what was happening. I did. "I can't do this anymore, Evie," James said, and his voice was flat, empty of the warmth I'd fallen in love with. "This life, it's not what I wanted." "What about what he wants?" I gestured to our son, my voice breaking. "What about Michael?" James looked at the boy, and for just a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or guilt, but then it was gone. "You'll be fine," he said. "You're stronger than me." I wanted to scream that I wasn't strong, that I was terrified, that I needed him. But Michael had stopped playing. He was watching us, those dark eyes too knowing for a 4-year-old. So I just nodded. The truck's engine rattled to life. Dust kicked up as the tires rolled down the driveway. Michael ran after it, little legs pumping, yelling, "Daddy, Daddy!" until he tripped and fell. I scooped him up, held him tight while he cried into my shoulder, and I made another promise, one I would keep, no matter what it took. "We're going to be okay. I'll make sure of it," that night, after Michael finally fell asleep. I sat at our kitchen table and looked at the bills scattered across the scratched surface. Rent, utilities, groceries. The numbers didn't add up. They wouldn't add up with just my diner wages. I found an ad in the newspaper for office cleaning, night shift, decent pay. My hand shook as I circled it with a pen. This was how it would begin. Me against the world, fighting to give my son the life he deserved. I just wish I'd known then that sometimes the people we sacrifice everything for can forget the price we paid. The years that followed blur together like watercolors left in the rain. Distinct moments bleeding into one another, creating something both beautiful and painful. I got the cleaning job, started at midnight, worked until 6 in the morning scrubbing floors in office buildings downtown while the city slept. Then I'd drive home, in that old Honda I bought for $800, held together mostly by prayers and duct tape. Wake Michael up, make him breakfast, and get him to school before my shift at the diner started at 9. "Mama, you look tired," Michael would say, his small hand on my cheek. "I'm fine, baby. Eat your eggs." I learned to survive on 3 hours of sleep. I learned which dollar store brand of coffee kept me functional. I learned how to stretch a pound of ground beef into 4 meals, how to patch jeans instead of buying new ones, how to smile even when my feet screamed and my back felt like it might snap. But I also learned joy in the smallest things. Michael's first A+ on a spelling test. I cried right there in the school parking lot. The way he'd curl up next to me on Sunday mornings. The only day I didn't work, and read me stories from his library books. His laughter when I'd splash him during dishes. Rare moments when I had enough energy to be playful. When I grow up, he told me once, around age 7, I'm gonna buy you a big house and you won't have to work anymore. Oh yeah, I smiled, tucking his hair behind his ear. And what are you gonna be? Something important, a doctor maybe, or a scientist, something that makes lots of money so you can rest. My heart swelled so big I thought it might burst. You don't worry about that, sweetheart. You just worry about being happy. But he was worried. Even at 7, he'd started noticing things. The way I'd grimace when I stood up, how our apartment was smaller than his friends' houses, that other kids got new sneakers while his were held together with super glue. When he turned 13, I found him crying in his room. What's wrong? I sat on his bed, alarm shooting through me. Kids at school, they said we're poor. They said you're just a waitress and that's nothing. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I took his face in my hands. Michael, listen to me. There's no shame in honest work. None. Your mama works hard because she loves you. That's everything, you understand. He nodded, but I saw something shift in his eyes that day. A seed of shame had been planted. High school brought new challenges. Michael excelled academically. Straight A's, honor roll science fair winner, but he started pulling away, spending more time in his room, less time telling me about his day. Then came the miracle, a full scholarship to Southern Methodist University in Dallas. 4 years, all expenses paid. I cried when the letter came. Happy tears, proud tears. This was it. Everything I'd worked for. My baby was going to college. He was going to have opportunities I never dreamed of. What I didn't know then was that this scholarship would cost me more than all those sleepless nights combined. The day I drove him to Dallas, my Honda overheating twice on the highway. Michael was quiet. When we unloaded his things in the dorm, I noticed how he kept glancing at the other parents. Fathers in polo shirts, mothers in designer sunglasses, SUVs with family stickers. You okay? I asked. Yeah, Mom, just nervous. I hugged him tight. You're going to do amazing things. I'm so proud of you. He hugged me back, but not as tightly as he used to. I should have known then, should have recognized the signs. But mothers see what they want to see, and I wanted to believe my son would never forget where he came from. I wanted to believe that love was enough. I sold my Honda 2 years later to pay for his textbooks when the scholarship didn't cover them. Started taking the bus, adding 40 minutes to each commute. Then I picked up weekend sewing work, mending clothes for neighbors, my fingers cramped and bleeding from needle pricks. Once, I even donated blood, twice in 1 month, to afford his winter coat when Texas had that rare cold snap. But I never told him, never wanted him to feel guilty, to feel burdened by what I'd given up. That was my mistake, because somewhere along the way, Michael started believing that his success was his alone, that he'd pulled himself up by his bootstraps, that he was self-made, and I became nothing more than an embarrassing footnote in his origin story, something to be edited out, erased, forgotten. The phone calls started changing around Michael's sophomore year. At first, it was subtle. He'd call every Sunday evening. That was our time. I'd settle into my worn armchair with a cup of tea, and we'd talk for an hour. He'd tell me about his classes, his professors, the friends he was making. I'd tell him about the diner, about Mrs. Henderson's new kid, about nothing important because my life was small and his was expanding. Then the calls became every other Sunday, then monthly, then only when I called him first. Hey, Mom, can't talk long. I've got a study group. Michael, honey, I haven't heard your voice in 3 weeks. I know, I'm sorry. College is just really intense. I'll call you soon, okay? Soon never came unless I made it come. The way he talked changed too. His accent, that soft Texas drawl he'd had since childhood, started disappearing. His vocabulary expanded with words I had to look up later. He'd mention restaurants I'd never heard of, reference movies I couldn't afford to see. We went to this amazing sushi place last night, he said once. Sushi? You always said raw fish sounded gross. A pause. I guess my tastes are evolving. Evolving, that word stuck with me, like he was a butterfly emerging from a cocoon, and I was something he needed to shed to fly. Thanksgiving of his junior year. He came home for exactly 36 hours. I'd spent 2 days cooking all his favorite foods: meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, my grandmother's apple pie. The apartment smelled like love and butter, but Michael barely ate. He pushed food around his plate, checking his phone every few minutes. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, I told some friends I'd meet them later. But you just got here." "Mom, I have a life in Dallas. I can't just—" He stopped himself, jaw tight. "Never mind." After dinner, he sat stiffly on the couch while I tried to make conversation. Every answer was clipped, polite, but distant, like I was an acquaintance instead of the woman who'd raised him. When he left the next morning, his hug was perfunctory, a obligation fulfilled. I stood in the doorway long after his friend's BMW disappeared down the street, trying to understand when I'd become someone my son wanted to escape from. Christmas was worse. He stayed 2 nights, spent most of it on his laptop. When I asked what he was working on, he said, "You wouldn't understand. It's complicated business stuff. Business stuff." My son, who used to explain every detail of his science projects, was now saying, "I wouldn't understand." "Try me," I said gently. He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not frustration, something colder, embarrassment. "It's fine, Mom, don't worry about it." I watched him scroll through Instagram, seeing glimpses of his other life, photos from parties in beautiful homes, him in a suit at some formal event, smiling with people who looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Not a single photo of me, not one mention of home, of where he came from. It was like I'd been erased. "Michael," I said one evening, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be, "do you ever talk about me to your friends?" He froze, fingers hovering over his keyboard. "What do you mean?" "I just wonder if they know about me, about us." "Of course they do." But he wouldn't meet my eyes. "They know I have a mom." Have a mom, present tense, but somehow making me feel past tense. The final blow came during his senior year. I called to tell him I'd finally saved enough to visit Dallas to see his campus, meet his friends. The silence on the other end stretched like taffy. "Mom, I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not? I'd love to see where you—" "It's just really busy right now, finals, graduation prep. Maybe another time." "Michael, I have to go. I'll call you later." He didn't call later, didn't call for weeks. And when graduation came, I sat in the audience alone, surrounded by families with matching shirts and balloons, watching my son accept his diploma without once looking my way. Afterward, when I found him among the celebrating graduates, he introduced me to his friends with a tight smile. "This is Evelyn, not my mom, just Evelyn." They shook my hand politely, asked surface-level questions, then pulled Michael away to take photos. I wasn't invited into any of them. On the drive home, I cried so hard I had to pull over, the kind of crying that comes from your bones, that empties you out. My son was gone, not dead. Something worse, alive, but ashamed of the woman who'd given him life, and I had no idea that the worst was still to come. The call came on a Tuesday evening in March. I was folding laundry, my own small pile of worn t-shirts and jeans, when my phone rang. "Mom!" My heart leapt. It had been almost 2 months since I'd heard his voice. "Michael, how are you?" "Sweetheart, I'm good, really good, actually." There was something in his voice, excitement, nervousness. "I have news." I sat down slowly, holding my breath. "What kind of news?" "I'm getting married." The world tilted. "Married? My baby boy? Getting married?" I should have been thrilled, but the first thing I felt was a strange, hollow ache. Nobody told me he was even dating someone seriously. Michael, that's wonderful." I forced brightness into my voice. "Tell me about her." "Her name's Emily Parker. She works in marketing. She's brilliant, Mom. Went to Stanford for undergrad, got her MBA from Wharton. Her family's from Austin. They're really great people. Really great people." The way he said it made my stomach clench. "When do I get to meet her?" Another pause. "Actually, we were thinking maybe this weekend. We're driving through on our way to San Antonio. We could stop by for lunch. This weekend, 4 days away. Meeting the woman my son was going to marry, with 4 days' notice." "Of course," I said. I'd love that. I spent those 4 days in a panic, cleaned my small apartment until it shone, bought groceries I couldn't quite afford, practiced what I'd say. I wanted Emily to like me, needed her to like me. Maybe if she did, Michael would remember that I wasn't something to hide. Saturday arrived with cruel sunshine. I'd made pot roast, Michael's favorite as a child, and wore my nicest dress, the navy one I saved for church. When the knock came, my hands were shaking. Michael stood in the doorway with a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a catalog, blonde hair in perfect waves, designer jeans, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Behind them, a sleek Audi sat in the parking lot. "Mom, this is Emily. Mrs. Miller. It's so nice to finally meet you." Emily's handshake was firm, but brief, like she was afraid of catching something. "Please, call me Evelyn. Come in, come in." They sat on my old couch, the one I'd bought second-hand 15 years ago, and I saw Emily's nose wrinkle slightly, saw how Michael's leg bounced nervously, how his eyes kept darting around the cramped space, like he was seeing it for the first time, like he was ashamed. "So, Emily, tell me about yourself," I said, pouring sweet tea into mismatched glasses. "Well, I work for a marketing firm in Dallas, corporate branding mostly. It's very fulfilling." Her tone was polite, but distant, the way you'd talk to a stranger at a bus stop. "And your family?" "Oh, they're wonderful. My father's a cardiovascular surgeon, and my mother is on several charity boards. They're very excited about the wedding." She glanced at Michael, who took her hand. "We're planning something elegant," Michael said. "Country club venue, about 200 guests. It's going to be beautiful. 200 guests. I tried to imagine myself in a room with 200 people who looked like Emily, who lived in her world. The thought made me dizzy. "That sounds lovely. When is it?" "June 10th, just 3 months away. We know it's quick, but we found the perfect venue and everything just clicked." Emily smiled at Michael, and for a moment I saw genuine warmth between them. Maybe she did love him. Maybe she was good for him. "I'm so happy for you both," I said, meaning it despite the ache in my chest. Lunch was painful. Emily picked at the pot roast, asked twice if the water was filtered, made small talk that felt rehearsed. Michael was quiet, contributing little, his discomfort radiating like heat when they stood to leave after barely an hour. Emily hugged me quickly. "Thank you for lunch, Mrs. Miller. We'll send you all the wedding details. Please do. I can't wait to celebrate with you." After they left, I found the invitation in my mailbox 2 weeks later. Expensive cardstock, embossed lettering, my name written in elegant calligraphy, Miss Evelyn Miller, Miss not Michael's mother, not beloved mom, just my name, alone, like I was any other guest, like I hadn't given everything to make this moment possible. I held that invitation and cried for the 3rd time that month, wondering when I'd become a stranger at my own son's wedding. The dress took me 3 weeks to make. I'd found a pattern at the fabric store. Simple, elegant, nothing flashy, and bought the blue material on sale. Every night after work, I'd sit at my old Singer sewing machine, the one my grandmother left me, stitching by lamplight until my eyes burned. Each stitch felt like a prayer. Please let him see me. Please let him remember. I practiced smiling in the mirror, rehearsing what I'd say when people asked how I knew the groom. "I'm his mother." Simple words, but they stuck in my throat. Would Michael even introduce me that way? The wedding was in Austin, a 3-hour drive. I'd saved enough for a modest hotel room for one night, budgeting every dollar, no meals out, no extras, just enough to be there for my son. Meanwhile, through sparse phone calls and social media posts I shouldn't have been checking, I watched Michael's wedding preparations unfold in a different world. The engagement photos were in some botanical garden, both of them looking like movie stars. The bridal shower happened at Emily's family estate. Yes, estate, with white tents and string lights and champagne towers. I wasn't invited to any of it. "Mom, it's mostly Emily's friends," Michael had said when I finally asked. "You wouldn't really know anyone." "I'd know you." Silence then. "It's just easier this way." Easier for whom? A month before the wedding, he called with his voice tight. "Listen, Mom, about the wedding." My heart stopped. "Yes, it's going to be pretty formal, black tie. I just want to make sure you're comfortable if it's too much trouble." "Michael, I'll be there. I'm your mother." "I know, He sighed. "Never mind, I'll see you there." but the message was clear. Don't embarrass me. I started having nightmares. In them, I'd arrive at the wedding and everyone would stop and stare. My dress would be wrong, my hair wrong, everything about me screaming that I didn't belong. Michael would look at me with those cold eyes and ask me to leave. I'd wake up gasping, heart racing, telling myself it was just anxiety, that my son wouldn't do that. But doubt had taken root. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a text, not a call, a text, with logistics, where to park, what time to arrive. At the bottom, seating will be assigned. Check in at the door. Assigned seating like I might sit somewhere inappropriate if left to my own devices. I tried on the blue dress one final time. It fit perfectly, modest and appropriate. In it, I looked exactly like what I was. A working-class woman in her 50s, trying her best. Would that be enough? The night before I left for Austin, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all those years, the double shifts, the bleeding fingers, the hunger, the sacrifice. Had it all been for this, to be tolerated at my own son's wedding? At 4 a.m., I got up and wrote a letter I'd never sent. Dear Michael, I don't know when I lost you. Was it the first day of college? The first time you came home and looked at our apartment with new eyes? Or was it earlier, that day in middle school when you realized we were poor? I want you to know I don't regret any of it. Not the exhaustion or the pain or the empty stomach nights. You were worth every second. I just wish you knew that. I wish you remembered. I folded the letter and put it in my jewelry box, next to your baby teeth and the Mother's Day cards you made in elementary school. Evidence that you loved me once. The drive to Austin felt like driving to my own execution. Every mile marker was a countdown. The closer I got, the harder my hands gripped the steering wheel. I checked into a Motel 6 on the outskirts, cheapest I could find, and hung my blue dress carefully in the bathroom, letting the steam from the shower remove the wrinkles. Tomorrow I'd walk into a world where I didn't belong. Tomorrow I'd smile and be gracious and try not to cry when my son looked through me like I was glass. Tomorrow I'd watch him get married and pray that somehow, somewhere in his heart, he still had room for the woman who'd given him everything. I just didn't know that tomorrow would also be the day everything shattered, and the day something unexpected would save us both. The country club looked like something out of a fairy tale. I arrived early, too early probably, but I couldn't sit in that motel room anymore. The building sprawled across manicured lawns, all white columns and floor-to-ceiling windows. A valet in a crisp uniform approached my beat-up sedan, and I saw his eyebrows rise slightly. I'm here for the Miller Parker wedding, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted. Of course. Right this way, ma'am. Inside, the foyer took my breath away. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, enormous arrangements of white roses and peonies perfuming the air. Women in designer dresses and men in tuxedos milled about, laughing, air-kissing, holding champagne flutes like they were born doing it. I smoothed my blue dress, my homemade blue dress, and suddenly felt like a child playing dress-up. Name. A young woman at the reception table smiled professionally. Evelyn Miller. She scanned her list, and I saw it. That flicker of recognition. Her eyes darted up to my face, then back down. Ah, yes, you're at table 16. Not the family table. Table 16. I didn't ask where that was. Didn't want to know yet. The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. The ceremony space is through those doors. She gestured vaguely before turning to greet the next guest, with noticeably more warmth. I walked through the indicated doors and stopped breathing. The ceremony space was gorgeous. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, an arch draped in more roses and gauzy fabric, string quartet playing softly in the corner, golden light streaming through tall windows, and there in the front row, I saw them. Emily's family, her parents, elegant and poised, siblings, I assumed, grandparents, all dressed immaculately, all belonging here so naturally it hurt. I looked for the groom's family section, found it mostly empty except for a few people I didn't recognize, distant relatives maybe, people Michael had invited instead of me. My seat, when I finally found table 16 after the ceremony, was near the back of the reception hall, not even close to the dance floor. I was surrounded by what seemed like business associates and distant friends, people who spent the cocktail hour comparing vacation homes and stock portfolios. "And how do you know the couple?" a woman in Chanel asked me politely. My throat tightened. "I'm Michael's mother." Her perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "Oh, I didn't realize. I mean, Emily mentioned her future mother-in-law was—" She stopped herself, cheeks flushing. "It's lovely to meet you." What had Emily said about me, or worse? What had Michael said? The woman turned away to talk to someone else, and I sat there, invisible again. The ceremony was beautiful. I cried. Of course I cried. When Michael appeared at the altar, so handsome in his tuxedo, my baby boy, all grown up, for just a moment I forgot everything else, and felt only pride. Emily walked down the aisle like a vision in white. The vows were traditional. Lovely. They looked happy. They looked right together. And I was too far away to hear most of it. The reception started with cocktails and appetizers I couldn't pronounce. Waiters glided through with trays of champagne. A photographer captured moments. Michael and Emily laughing, Emily with her parents, Michael with Emily's family. Not once did the photographer approach me. Not once did Michael look my way. I stood near a window, nursing ginger ale because I couldn't afford to have my emotions loosened by alcohol. Watching my son live his new life, he was radiant, confident, moving through the crowd like he owned it, shaking hands, hugging people, smiling that smile I used to see every morning across the breakfast table. "Michael looks so happy," someone said nearby. "Emily's family is just perfect for him, so refined, such good breeding, like he was a horse, like I hadn't bred him, raised him, made him." Dinner was served, filet mignon, lobster tail, dishes I'd only seen on cooking shows. It tasted like ash in my mouth because 3 tables away, Michael sat with Emily's parents, leaning in to hear something Linda Parker said, laughing genuinely. When was the last time he laughed like that with me? Then the DJ announced it was time for toasts. My hands started trembling. Would Michael mention me? Would he at least acknowledge my existence? The best man spoke. Emily's father spoke. Everyone laughed at the right moments, dabbed their eyes at the touching parts. Then Michael stood up, microphone in hand, and my heart hammered so hard I thought everyone could hear it. This was it. This was my moment. Surely he'd thank me, acknowledge everything, tell these people who I was. He cleared his throat, smiled at the crowd, and began to speak, and my entire world began to collapse. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," Michael began, his voice steady and warm. The room quieted. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips, all eyes on him. My hands clutched my napkin in my lap. "Thank you, God. Let him see me. Let him remember. Marriage is about family," he continued. "About the people who shape us, who teach us what love really means. Yes, I shaped you, I taught you. And there's one person I need to thank above all others." He turned, looking across the room. My breath caught. This was it. One woman who showed me what it means to be truly devoted, to give selflessly, to love unconditionally. Tears pricked my eyes. I started to smile. Emily's mom, Linda Parker. The words hit me like a physical blow. "Linda, you welcomed me into your family like I was already your son. You've been the mother I always needed, the example of grace and kindness I aspired to." The room blurred. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Michael walked across the dance floor, not toward me, toward Linda Parker. The crowd watched, many already dabbing their eyes. He hugged her, this elegant woman in her cream suit, kissed her cheek while cameras flashed like lightning. Everyone applauded, the kind of thunderous applause that makes your chest vibrate. I sat frozen, my face locked in what must have looked like a smile, but felt like my skin was cracking. My napkin was twisted so tight in my hands, my fingers had gone white. "Breathe. Just breathe. Don't make a scene. Don't embarrass him," but he wasn't done. Michael turned then and his eyes found me. For just a second, I thought, hoped, prayed. He was going to make this right, to include me, to say something. His expression changed. The warmth drained away, replaced by something colder, harder. "Mom," he said into the microphone, and the way he said it made my name sound like an accusation. "Honestly, you didn't have to come today. You don't really belong here." The room gasped, actually gasped, a collective intake of breath that seemed to suck all the oxygen away. The string quartet stuttered to a stop mid-note. Someone dropped a fork. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I felt every eye turn towards me. 200 pairs of eyes boring into me, pitying me, shocked by me. My face burned, my vision tunneled. The chandelier lights above seemed too bright, like interrogation lamps. "You don't belong here," the words my son just said to me to his mother in front of all these people. My throat closed. I couldn't swallow, couldn't breathe. My heart was breaking so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. Each crack and splinter echoing through this beautiful room. I had to leave, had to get out, had to escape before I completely fell apart in front of these strangers. My chair scraped against the floor as I stood. Too loud in the awful silence. My legs shook but held. I grabbed my small purse with trembling hands. "Don't cry, don't cry. Wait until you're outside. Please, God, let me make it outside." I took one step, then another. The room stretched before me like a mile. Every face I passed looked stricken, embarrassed, some even angry, but not at Michael, at me, for being here, for existing, for having the audacity to give birth to someone who didn't want me. Linda Parker's face was flushed, her mouth slightly open. Emily stood frozen beside her, hand over her mouth. Michael just stood there, microphone still in hand, watching me go. I was halfway to the door when I heard movement behind me. "Wait!" Emily's voice, not Michael's. Emily's. I turned, tears finally spilling down my cheeks, unable to stop them anymore. Emily Parker, the bride in her thousands of dollars dress, was walking toward me. But she wasn't looking at me with pity or embarrassment. She was looking at me with something else entirely. Fury. She turned to face the crowd, reaching for another microphone from a nearby stand. Her hand shook, but her voice, when she spoke, was clear as crystal. "Before this celebration continues," she said, and the room fell into a different kind of silence. Charged, electric. I need to tell the truth, because what just happened isn't right, and everyone here deserves to know. Michael's face went pale. "Emily, what are you—" "No." She held up her hand. "You've talked enough." She turned towards me, and in her eyes, I saw something I never expected to see from this polished, privileged young woman: recognition, understanding, and something that looked almost like love. "Mrs. Miller," she said softly, "I think it's time everyone learned the truth about who you really are." And in that moment, everything changed. My legs wouldn't move. I stood there, halfway between my table and the exit, tears streaming down my face. As Emily Parker, this woman I'd met once, this woman who'd seemed so distant and uncomfortable around me, stood before 200 guests in her wedding dress and prepared to defend me. "Michael told me a story when we first started dating," Emily began, her voice shaking but determined. "He said his mother abandoned him, that she was never there for him, that she didn't care about his education, his future, his success." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Michael's face had gone from pale to red. "Emily, stop!" "He said," she continued louder now, "that he was basically self-made, that everything he achieved alone." The room held its breath. Emily's eyes found mine across the distance. "But that's not true, is it, Mrs. Miller?" I couldn't speak, could barely stand. My knees felt like water. She turned back to the crowd. 3 weeks ago, I was getting my hair done at a salon in Dallas. The woman next to me was older, sweet, from Texas. We got to talking. When I mentioned I was getting married, she asked my fiancé's name. Michael closed his eyes. He knew what was coming. When I said Michael Miller from Rockwell, Texas, her whole face lit up. "Little Michael," she said. "Evelyn's boy." Turns out she was Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor who lived next door to Michael for 10 years. I remembered Mrs. Henderson. She'd watched Michael sometimes when I worked double shifts, fed him cookies, let him play with her cat. She told me everything. Emily's voice cracked, but she pushed on. How Evelyn worked 3 jobs, 3, to keep them afloat. How she worked the breakfast shift at the diner, then cleaned offices until midnight, then came home and sewed clothes for neighbors until she could barely keep her eyes open. Gasps scattered through the audience. I saw people glancing at me, their expressions transforming from discomfort to shock. Mrs. Henderson told me about the car. Emily looked directly at Michael now, her eyes glistening. How when Michael needed textbooks his scholarship didn't cover, expensive medical textbooks, Evelyn sold her only car, her only transportation. She started taking the bus, adding 2 hours to her daily commute because her son needed books. I didn't ask her to. Michael started, but Emily cut him off. No, you didn't ask. Because she never told you. She never wanted you to feel guilty or burdened. Emily's voice rose. Mrs. Henderson also told me about the blood donations. How Evelyn donated blood, twice in 1 month, to afford your winter coat when Texas had that freak cold snap your sophomore year. I heard someone sob. Couldn't tell who. Everything was blurring together. This woman, Emily gestured towards me, and I'd never felt so exposed, so seen. Gave up everything, food, sleep, comfort, her own health, all for you. And today, on what should be one of the happiest days of your life, you humiliated her in front of everyone. The silence was deafening. No one moved. No one breathed. Emily turned to Linda Parker, who looked stricken. Mrs. Parker, you're a wonderful woman, but you weren't there when Michael was 4 and his father left. You weren't there for the hungry nights, the exhausted mornings, the sacrifices that no child should ever have to see their parent make. Linda's hand covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Michael, Emily said, and her voice broke completely now. I loved you. I wanted to build a life with you, but I can't. I can't marry someone who's so ashamed of where he came from that he'll deny the woman who sacrificed everything for him. The room erupted. Voices overlapping, some people crying, others looking at Michael with disgust, at me with pity, at Emily with admiration. Michael stood frozen, the microphone hanging loose in his hand. His carefully constructed world was crumbling around him, and everyone was watching. Emily, please! His voice was desperate now, raw. I can explain. Explain what? Her words cut like glass. That you lied to me. That you erased your own mother from your story. That you were willing to let her leave this wedding believing she wasn't good enough. She looked at me again, and this time she walked toward me, took my hands in hers, up close. I could see she was trembling as hard as I was. Mrs. Miller, I'm so sorry. I should have found you sooner. Should have told you this privately, but he needed to hear it. They all needed to hear it. Why? I whispered. Why would you do this? Ruin your own wedding? Because, she said simply. What's the point of marrying someone if the foundation is built on lies and shame? And because no mother, should ever be treated the way he just treated you. She squeezed my hands once more, then turned back to face the room and waited for what would happen next. The silence that followed Emily's words felt like the moment between lightning and thunder, everyone waiting for the impact, knowing it would be devastating. Then I heard it, the sound of a microphone clattering to the floor. Michael! He stood there, his tuxedo suddenly looking too big for him, like a child playing dress-up in his father's clothes. His shoulders slumped forward, his perfect posture, the one he'd cultivated so carefully, collapsing under the weight of truth. The confident man who'd been holding court all evening had vanished, replaced by someone who looked utterly lost, young, terrified. His face had gone from red to a sickly gray-white, the color of someone who'd just realized they'd driven off a cliff and were suspended in that terrible moment before the fall. He looked around at the crowd, at their shocked faces, their judging eyes, their whispered conversations behind cupped hands, and I saw the exact moment the weight of what he'd done crashed into him like a physical force. His legs buckled slightly, and for a second I thought he might collapse right there. His mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish drowning in air. No words came out. His eyes swept across the room, and I could see him registering it all. The disgust on some faces, the pity on others, the disappointment radiating from Emily's family, his carefully constructed image. The person he'd spent years becoming was crumbling in real time. Every lie, every omission, every moment of shame he'd made me feel, it was all reflected back at him now, magnified by 200 witnesses. Then, slowly, he started walking, not toward Emily, not toward Linda Parker, or his groomsmen, or anyone who might offer him an escape. Toward me, the crowd parted like the Red Sea, no one wanting to be in his path, as if his shame might be contagious. Every step he took felt like an eternity. The only sound was his shoes on the polished floor. Click, 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 each footfall echoing in the cavernous silence. I stood there, Emily's hands still holding mine, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat, behind my eyes, in my fingertips. Part of me wanted to run, part of me wanted to stay and see what came next. All of me was terrified. When he reached me, standing barely 2 feet away, Michael didn't speak. He didn't try to explain or justify or rationalize. Didn't attempt to spin it into something more palatable, more acceptable. Instead, he dropped to his knees, right there, in front of 200 people in their designer clothes and their judgment, in front of his new in-laws and business associates, and everyone he'd been trying so desperately to impress. My son fell to his knees on the polished floor. The impact made a dull sound that seemed to echo. I saw him wince, but he didn't get up, didn't adjust, just stayed there, on his knees, looking up at me with eyes so full of anguish it physically hurt to meet them. "Mom," he whispered, and his voice shattered on that single syllable like glass hitting concrete. The tears came then, his tears, not just mine. They streamed down his face unchecked, cutting tracks through his careful composure, and he didn't wipe them away, didn't try to hide them, just let them fall. "Mom, I'm so sorry." His whole body shook with the force of the words. "God, I'm so sorry." Around us, I heard sobbing, women crying openly, men clearing their throats and looking away. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving, standing frozen with trays in hand, witnessing this moment. I was so wrong, so terribly, horribly wrong. His hands reached up but didn't touch me, hovering in the air between us like he was afraid I'd disappear if he made contact. I let pride blind me. I let ambition poison me. I wanted so badly to fit into this world. He gestured vaguely around him, taking in the chandelier, the roses, the elegance, that I convinced myself you were something to be ashamed of, that my past was something to hide, something to erase. His voice broke completely on that last word. "You sacrificed everything for me. Everything. You went hungry so I could eat. You sold your car, your only way to get to work, so I could have textbooks. You worked yourself to the bone, literally bled for me, so I could have opportunities you never had." He grabbed my hands then, suddenly desperate, and I felt how cold his fingers were, how they trembled against my skin. "And I treated you like you were nothing, like you were a burden, like you were someone to be erased from my story because you didn't fit the narrative I wanted to tell." The room was completely silent, except for scattered sobbing and the sound of Michael's ragged breathing. "I told Emily you abandoned me." His face crumpled with the confession. "I told her you didn't care about my education, that you never supported me. I lied. I lied about the woman who gave up everything so I could have something." Each word seemed to cost him something. I could see it in the way his shoulders shook, in the way he could barely get the sentences out. I was ashamed. Ashamed of where we lived, of your jobs, of being poor. And instead of being grateful for what you did with what little we had, I blamed you for not having more. He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. How twisted is that? I blamed you for the very thing you were killing yourself to overcome. I felt Emily's hands squeeze mine once more before releasing them, giving us space. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," Michael said, his face tilted up to mine like a supplicant in prayer. "I don't. What I did today, what I've been doing for years, it's unforgivable. But I'm begging you. Mom, please. I can't lose you. I can't." He couldn't finish, just sobbed, his forehead pressed against our joined hands, his whole body convulsing with the force of his grief. My own tears fell freely now, splashing onto our clasped hands. Years of hurt poured out, the lonely phone calls, the cancelled visits, the feeling of being erased, of watching my son pretend I didn't exist, all of it flowing out in salt water and shaking shoulders. But underneath the pain, there was something else, something that had been there all along, even in the darkest moments. Love, that stubborn, impossible, unconditional love that every mother knows, the kind that survives everything. Neglect, betrayal, even public humiliation, the kind that shouldn't exist but does anyway, defying logic and self-preservation. I pulled one hand free and placed it on his head. feeling his hair, still thick and dark like it was when he was a boy, under my palm. The gesture was automatic, muscle memory from 1,000 childhood hurts that needed soothing. "Michael," I said softly, and he looked up immediately, his face streaked with tears and snot and desperation. "You don't need to kneel. You don't need to beg." "But his voice cracked. "After what I did, listen to me." My voice was stronger now, clearer. A mother's heart doesn't hold grudges. It can't. I forgave you long before this moment, even when it hurt so much I couldn't breathe, even when I cried myself to sleep, wondering what I did wrong, wondering how I failed you. I'd already forgiven you. He made a sound like something vital had broken inside him, relief and anguish mixed together. "But," I held up my hand, needing him to hear this. "You need to understand something, Michael. You need to really hear this." I cupped his face in both hands, the way I had when he was 4 and learning to be brave after his father left. His skin was wet with tears, warm under my palms. "Money means nothing. Success means nothing, these fancy clothes and cars and country clubs." I gestured around us, taking in the opulence that had seemed so important to him. "They mean absolutely nothing if you forget where you came from, if you forget the people who loved you when you had nothing, when you were nothing but potential and hope." "I know," he whispered. "God, I know that now. Do you?" I searched his eyes, needing to see the truth there. "Because I don't need you to be successful, Michael. I don't need you to be rich or important or impressive. I never did. I just need you to be good, to be kind, to be the boy I raised, the one who shared his lunch with kids who forgot theirs, who helped old Mrs. Henderson carry her groceries, who told me every single night that he loved me before he went to sleep." "I still love you," he said desperately, urgently, like if he said it fast enough it would undo everything. I never stopped. I lost myself. I forgot what mattered. I got so caught up in becoming someone else that I forgot who I was, who you made me. Around us, I was vaguely aware of people crying openly, of Linda Parker with her hand over her mouth, mascara running down her cheeks, of Emily's father with his arm around his wife, both of them looking at their daughter with something like awe. I pulled Michael up then. He resisted at first, like he thought he should stay on his knees forever, but I tugged harder and he rose. Then I wrapped my arms around him and he collapsed into me like a puppet with cut strings. He clung to me the way he used to after nightmares, when he was small enough to fit in my lap, when my embrace could fix anything. He wasn't small anymore. He was taller than me now, broader, but the need was exactly the same. His whole body shook with sobs. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," he kept repeating into my shoulder, the words muffled and broken. "I've got you," I whispered into his hair, one hand on the back of his head, the other rubbing circles on his back like I had when he was a baby with colic. "I've always got you. I never let go, even when you wanted me to." We stood like that for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The room around us faded. The people, the judgment, the spectacle. It was just us, mother and son, broken and healing, finding our way back to each other across a distance that had seemed impossible to bridge. Finally, Michael pulled back, wiping his face with his hands. His eyes were swollen, his face blotchy, his perfect hair disheveled. He looked more like my son than he had in years. Emily approached us slowly, hesitantly, like she was afraid of intruding on something sacred. Her own face was wet with tears, her makeup smudged. "Michael," she said quietly, her voice gentle but firm, "if we're going to do this, build a life together, it has to be built on truth, on respect, on real family, not the fake version you were trying to create." He turned to her, and I saw genuine fear in his eyes. "I understand if you can't, if this is too much, if you don't want to marry someone who could do something like this. I want your mother to be part of our lives," Emily interrupted, her voice stronger now. "From today forward, really part of it, not obligation or a duty visit twice a year, part of our family, Sunday dinners, holidays, phone calls just to talk, all of it." She looked at me directly. "Mrs. Miller, Evelyn, you helped make him who he is. The good parts, the parts I fell in love with, his work ethic, his determination, his intelligence, those came from watching you. and I want to know that person. The real one, not the one he's been pretending to be. You'd still marry him, I asked, genuinely confused. After all this, people make mistakes, Emily said simply. Big, terrible mistakes, but what matters is what they do after, how they grow, whether they choose pride or love when those two things are in conflict. She looked at Michael. He chose pride before. Now he needs to choose love every day, for the rest of his life. Michael looked between us, disbelief and hope and gratitude all warring on his face. You'd still, after what I did to both of you, on one condition, Emily said firmly. No more lies, no more hiding, no more shame about where you came from. Your mother is a gift, not an embarrassment. And if you can't see that, if you backslide into this toxic thinking, then we're done. I mean it, Michael. This is your one chance. I understand. His voice was hoarse but steady. I won't waste it, I promise. The band, which had been standing frozen and uncertain, started playing softly. Someone, probably the wedding planner trying to salvage something from this disaster, must have signaled them. The opening notes of a familiar melody drifted through the room. You'll Be in My Heart, by Phil Collins. Michael let out a laugh that was half sob, half something that might have been joy. Remember this song? Mom, you used to play it when I was scared of thunderstorms, when I had nightmares, when Dad left and I couldn't stop crying. I remember, my voice was thick with emotion. I'd hold you and dance around the kitchen until you fell asleep. Dance with me. He held out his hand, and it was shaking. Please let me try to make just one thing right tonight. I looked at his outstretched hand, the hand I'd held crossing streets, the hand I'd bandaged after playground falls, the hand that had pulled away from mine years ago. I took it. He led me to the dance floor and the crowd moved aside, creating space. Someone started clapping, slowly at first, then others joined, until the sound filled the room. Not mocking applause, not the polite kind from before. Real, genuine, moved applause. Michael placed one hand on my waist, held my other hand in his, and we began to move. He was a better dancer now, probably took lessons for the wedding, but he was also crying too hard to really follow any formal steps. So we just swayed, like we used to in our tiny kitchen, when steps didn't matter and only the closeness did. I missed this, he whispered. I missed you. I've been so lonely trying to be someone I'm not. You're home now, I said. That's all that matters. You're home. Around us, the world faded. The country club with its crystal and marble, the people in their expensive clothes, the judgment and the spectacle. All of it disappeared. It was just us again, like it used to be in our small apartment, dancing in the kitchen while dinner cooked, when love was simple and uncomplicated and enough, when I was enough just as I was. The song played on, and we danced, and something that had been broken for so long finally began to heal. Sunday afternoon light filters through the kitchen window of Michael and Emily's house in San Antonio, catching dust motes that dance like tiny stars in the golden beams. The smell of chocolate chip cookies, Noah's favorite, fills the air, mixing with the scent of fresh coffee and the faint perfume of the jasmine blooming in the backyard. From somewhere outside, I hear my grandson's laughter, pure and uncomplicated, the kind of sound that makes you believe the world might actually be good. 3 years have passed since that wedding day. 3 years since everything broke and then, miraculously, mended into something stronger than it was before. The way a bone, once broken and healed, becomes harder at the break. Grandma, look at me. Noah's voice carries through the screen door, high and excited. I move to the window, wiping flour from my hands onto the apron Emily bought me last Christmas. Navy blue with white flowers, nicer than anything I would have bought for myself. Through the glass, I watch Noah zoom around the yard with his toy airplane, his dark hair, Michael's hair, catching the sunlight. Michael chases behind him, making exaggerated whooshing sounds, his tie loosened and his dress shirt untucked from this morning's church service. My son, my beautiful, flawed, human son, who learned to be humble again, who learned that falling isn't the end of the story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a better one. He's going to wear Michael out, Emily says, appearing beside me with a mixing bowl. Her hair is pulled back in a messy bun. Her own apron, matching mine, we bought them together, dusted with cocoa powder. She's nothing like the stiff, uncomfortable woman I met that first day in my tiny apartment. That woman was performing, playing a role. This woman, flower-dusted and relaxed, is real. Good, I say, smiling. He needs to remember what it's like to play. He works too hard. He gets that from you. Emily bumps my shoulder affectionately. We work in comfortable silence for a moment. The rhythm of baking something we've perfected over dozens of Sunday afternoons, just like this one. She measures. I mix. She asks questions. Is this enough vanilla? Should they be more golden? And I guide her through my grandmother's recipe, the one passed down through generations of women who knew how to make something sweet out of very little. Thank you, I say quietly. Watching my hands work the dough, Emily looks up, confused. For what? You're the one teaching me. Not for the baking, for that day, for speaking up, for seeing me when I'd become invisible. Her expression softens, and she sets down the measuring cup to take my hand. Her fingers are sticky with dough, but she doesn't let go. Evelyn, I couldn't not. What he did, what he almost got away with. It was wrong, and honestly. She squeezes my hand. Learning the truth about you, about everything you did. It made me love him more, not less. How's that possible? Because it meant he came from real love, real sacrifice, real strength. He just needed to remember it. She pauses, her voice going softer. Plus, if I'm being completely honest, I've always wanted a mom who'd teach me things. My mother. She's wonderful, but she was always so busy with charity work and social obligations. We had nannies, tutors, staff, but we didn't have this. She gestures around the kitchen, at the mess and the warmth and the simple act of making something together. My throat tightens. You have it now. I know. Her eyes glisten. And I'm grateful every single day. The back door bursts open with a bang, and Noah tumbles in, Michael right behind him, both of them breathless and grinning. Noah's shirt is grass-stained, his shoes untied. He looks perfectly, gloriously disheveled. Something smells amazing, Michael says, loosening his tie completely and tossing it onto the back of a chair. Something that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago, when everything had to be perfect, controlled, impressive. They're not ready yet, I scold, but I'm smiling, already moving toward them. Michael sets Noah down. The boy immediately races to inspect the cooling cookies on the rack, then walks over to me. He does this every time he sees me now, wraps me in a hug, kisses my cheek, holds on just a second longer than necessary, like he's afraid I might disappear if he doesn't physically confirm I'm still here. How was your week, Mom? He asks, and there's genuine interest in his voice, not the perfunctory politeness from before. Good, busy. Mrs. Henderson and I had lunch on Wednesday. She asked about you. Of course, wanted to know if you're still remembering your manners. His smile falters, just slightly. That flash of shame that probably won't ever fully disappear, and maybe shouldn't. Some scars serve as reminders. Tell her I said hi, and that I'm sorry it took me so long to remember what she tried to teach me about gratitude and kindness. I will. I touch his cheek, and he leans into it like he's starving for the contact. She's proud of you, you know, for how you've changed. I'm trying. His voice drops lower, meant just for me. Every day, I'm trying. I know, sweetheart, and it shows. Noah tugs on my skirt. Grandma, can we watch the dinosaur movie, please? Dad said we have to ask you first. I look at Michael, who shrugs with a grin. I told him you're the boss on Sundays. The boss, I laugh. Since when? Since always. I was just too stupid to realize it before. We settle in the living room, a space that's become as familiar to me as my own home. Noah curls up on my lap, heavy and warm and smelling like grass and sunshine. The opening credits of his favorite dinosaur movie start playing for what must be the 100th time. But I don't mind. There's something peaceful about the repetition, the ritual of it. Michael and Emily sit on the other couch, her legs tucked under her, his arm around her shoulders. They look at each other and then at us, and I see something pass between them, contentment, gratitude, the quiet happiness of ordinary moments. Halfway through the movie, Noah falls asleep on my lap, his mouth slightly open, his hand curled against his chest. I stroke his hair, so soft, so dark, and marvel at the miracle of him, that this child exists because two people found each other, that he'll grow up knowing his grandmother, hearing stories about where his father came from, learning that love sometimes requires sacrifice. He looks like you did at that age, I whisper to Michael, who's gotten up to bring me a blanket. Same hair, same way of sleeping with his mouth open. Did I snore too? Michael tucks the blanket around Noah and me, like a freight train. We laugh quietly, careful not to wake the sleeping boy. Emily excuses herself to check on the cookies, and I'm left alone with my son for a moment. Michael sits on the edge of the couch, close enough that our knees touch. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you forgive me? His voice is thick with emotion. After everything I did, how could you just... Michael? No, I mean it. I've thought about it every day for 3 years. I humiliated you in front of hundreds of people. I denied you, erased you, treated you like you were shameful, and you just forgave me immediately like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing, I say carefully, still stroking Noah's hair. It hurt more than you'll probably ever understand. But you're my son. That doesn't change because you made terrible choices. It doesn't change because you hurt me. But shouldn't there be limits? Shouldn't there be a point where I stop loving you? I look at him directly. Michael, there is no such point. There can't be. That's what being a mother means. You don't get to choose when it's convenient or when you deserve it. It just is. His eyes fill with tears. Even after 3 years, he still cries easily when we talk about that day. His therapist. Yes, he's been seeing a therapist. Working through the shame and the need to prove himself. Says it's healthy. That he kept emotions bottled up for so long that now they overflow at the smallest trigger. I don't deserve you, he whispers. Stop saying that. You don't have to deserve love. You just have to accept it and try to be worthy of it. There's a difference. Emily returns with fresh coffee, and we spend the rest of the afternoon in easy companionship. The movie plays on. Cookies are eaten. Noah wakes up and claims 4 before we cut him off. His face smeared with chocolate. Stories are told, the kind that get repeated every time we're together because they are part of our family mythology. Now Michael tells the story about the time he tried to help me bake a cake when he was 6 and accidentally used salt instead of sugar. Emily shares a story from her own childhood, rare because she's still learning how to be vulnerable, how to let us see the imperfect parts of her life. Noah, half listening, adds his own nonsensical commentary that makes us all laugh. As the sun starts to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that remind me of home, I begin gathering my things. This is always the hardest part. Leaving, not because they make me feel unwelcome, but because I want to stay in this warmth forever, want to bottle up these ordinary precious moments. Michael walks me to my car, the newer used sedan they insisted on helping me buy last year. Despite my protests that my old one was fine, we stand in the driveway, and I can hear crickets starting their evening song. Mom, wait. He catches my arm gently. I need to tell you something. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need you to know that I tell him about you, about everything, the sacrifices, the hard times, all of it. Michael, he's 4. He doesn't need to. Yes, he does. His voice is firm. Maybe not all the details yet, but the important parts. I want Noah to grow up understanding what real love looks like, what it costs, what it's worth. I don't want him to make the same mistakes I did. I touch his cheek. This man who was once my little boy. You're a good father. I'm trying to be. I look at him and think about how you must have looked at me, and I can't. His voice breaks. I can't imagine ever making him feel the way I made you feel. And if I ever did, I'd want him to forgive me the way you forgave me, even though I wouldn't deserve it. That's the secret, I say softly. It's never about deserving. It's about loving anyway. He pulls me into another hug, and over his shoulder I can see Noah's face in the window, pressed against the glass, waving at me. Emily stands behind him, her hand on his shoulder, smiling that gentle smile that says, "This is family. This is what matters." I used to think success was about what you had, Michael says into my hair. The car, the house, the job title, the right friends, the impressive life. Now I know it's about who stands by you when you have nothing, who loves you when you're at your worst, who sees the real you and doesn't turn away. You've learned well. I had a good teacher. He grins through his tears. Even if I was a terrible student for a while there, The best students are the ones who struggle before they succeed. We stand there for another moment, not wanting to break the connection. Finally, I pull away, wipe his tears with my thumb the way I did when he was small. I love you, Mom. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. I love you too. Sweetheart, I always have. I always will. Driving home, the sunset painting the sky in those familiar Texas colors. I think about everything that's past, the pain, the betrayal, the moment I thought I'd lost my son forever, the way it felt to stand in that country club and hear him say, I didn't belong. But I think more about what came after, about the long, slow work of rebuilding trust, about therapy sessions and difficult conversations and Michael's commitment to change, about Emily's patience and her own journey to understanding where she came from and what family really means, about Noah, this unexpected gift, this child who represents our second chance, about forgiveness, not the instant, movie version kind, but the real kind, the kind that takes time and effort and the willingness to be hurt again, to trust again, to believe that people can change even when you've seen them at their worst. My phone buzzes at a red light. A text from Michael. Love you, Mom. Thank you for never giving up on me. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. I pull over to respond through happy tears. I never could give up on you. You're my heart. You always were, even when you forgot it, especially then. Another text comes through. This one from Emily. Same time next Sunday. Noah wants to make your famous apple pie. I'll bring the apples, I respond. Then one more from Michael. Bringing Noah to visit you on Wednesday after his preschool. He wants to see your old photo albums. Wants to know what his dad was like as a kid. I think I'm ready to show him now. Ready to tell him the whole truth. I stare at that message for a long moment, feeling something warm and bright expand in my chest. I'd love that. I have so many stories to tell him. Some things, I've learned, are stronger than pride, stronger than shame, stronger than the distance we put between ourselves and the people who matter most, stronger than the worst mistakes we can make. Love, the stubborn, impossible, unconditional kind that survives everything. The kind that forgives 70 times, 7 times. The kind that says, I see you at your worst, and I choose you anyway. The kind that bends but doesn't break. That bruises but heals. That remembers even when it would be easier to forget. The kind that brings you home. And as I drive through the familiar streets, heading back to my small apartment that doesn't feel quite so small anymore, I whisper a prayer of gratitude for second chances, for sons who learn and grow, for daughters-in-law who become daughters, for grandsons who will grow up knowing they're loved, for the ordinary miracle of Sunday afternoons and chocolate chip cookies and family that chooses itself every single day. 3 years ago, I stood in a country club and watched my world shatter. Today, I'm driving home from a life more beautiful than any I could have imagined. Not because the pain never happened, but because we walked through it together and came out the other side. Sometimes the best stories are the ones where everything falls apart before it can come back together, where we have to lose ourselves to find what matters, where the breaking is what makes room for the healing. This is one of those stories, and I'm grateful every single day that it's mine.